Hello and welcome to Mandibil. This is part 12 of my deconstruction of Keith Frankish's lecture series on Illusionism. And we are still in lecture 2, the case against Qualia, sometime around the 1 hour and 20 minute mark with a little more than half an hour left. So maybe with a bit of luck we can get through lecture 2 here. I am actually trying to go for that within the hour. And within an hour. And let's just head into it and get going, right? But I can promise maybe it will be 2 parts before we are done with lecture 2. Let's see. Carry on, Mr. Frankish.
Go to Reagan's website and find other examples on the web. Now, again, Dennett has a question for you here. While you were watching these videos, before you noticed the change, before you identified the change, were your qualia changing? Now, as Dennett notes here, we know that the cones in your retina...
Maybe it's just me, but doesn't that sound like a contradiction? Before you were aware of it, did something change? Well, I can't know it changes if I'm not aware of it, can I? I mean, how does it work for you, this, right? Being aware of something is what you need in order to have what term should I put, idea of what is going on? And if you're not aware, you don't have that idea, right? You don't have that insight, whatever. So is the lower level of awareness, and it's like when things have to be it compounds into more and more and more and more complexity. It's a sign of bad philosophy, right? Always, in my opinion, right? When you answer a question and then 5 new questions appear, then you then have to deal with, right? Then there's some there's something wrong with it, right? It just doesn't work. It doesn't align with my sort of everyday understanding, right? Did something change? I don't know, man. If I'm in the now and the change was based on something I'm comparing to in the past, that past is no longer a part of that now, right? Because it's merely, if anything, it's a memory. But a memory is not a qualia. Memory of qualia is not qualia. Just like a photograph of the moon is not the moon, right? The moon. You took a photograph of the moon yesterday. That photograph is no longer the moon, right? Just like a memory of my qualia yesterday, or few seconds ago, for that matter, right, is no longer a qualia. So what I'm referring it to or comparing it to is a memory that might as well be, something my mind made, right? I don't have a memory and then a reference memory where I can compare my memory to what is the right memory, right? A memory is a memory, right? There's not a higher level memory and a lower level memory, right? Not as far as I would say, right? So as soon as it's a memory, it's no longer the qualia. So you're comparing categories here, right? Or it's I would say, right? But you seem to do not care about these kinds of aspects of the philosophy. You're just trying to cherry pick certain things that, oh yes, I might not even notice it changing, but I changed my understanding of, but that's not based on the qualia, so the qualia is not important. So, no, be careful with this dude, right? Be very careful, because it seems to me he's just a cherry picky kind of guy, right? It's not based on foundational metaphysics that anybody can relate to, that is simple and crystal clear, anything like that. And then building from that with reasoning and argument and axioms and so on, right? That constantly says, okay, do we agree about this? Okay, next step. Do we agree about this? Okay, next step. And at some point you might get to, elephants or something like that, right? On knowledge and ethics, way down the line, right? But this is just, there's a beetle in a box, right? or a picture of him looking into his refrigerator or something like that. That doesn't work for me. And this, if it's about, you know, appealing to some lower common denominator of your average philosophy goer, right? Philosophy viewer, sort of a talking down to the little people, right? Yeah, I better make something that they can understand. Otherwise, they simply can't, you know, handle this big thing I'm doing. Right? I'm not buying it.
Retinas were responding differently with each change of image. Different wavelength of light was falling on your retinas, and the cones in your retina were definitely responding to that. And they would be sending different signals to your visual cortex, and presumably this would be causing some differences in the processing there before you noticed.
Oh, fuck.
What was my experience like?
Sorry about that.
Shown in the Cartesian theatre.
I just...
A dramatic change.
This is sometimes
So there are lots more examples of these, and you can...
sometimes a problem when I try to navigate the icons on the video, and I get to click the progression line of the video, and then it jumps back to the beginning or something like that. That's annoying. Let's see.
Identified the change. Were your qualia changing? Now, as Dennett notes here, we know that the cones in your retinas were responding differently with each change of image. Different wavelength of light was falling on your retinas, and the cones in your retina were definitely responding to that. And they would be sending different signals to your visual cortex, and presumably...
Yeah, what I was going for is the final question here, and, you know, also ending a philosophical quote with a question, right? You're not answering, you're not giving philosophy by ending it with a question. So what is your answer, right? What is your answer, right? So you can't handle the big truth, right? Then I'm right? This kind of a, you know, I have no particular respect for Dennett, and I certainly do not have any particular big respect for Keith Frankish, right? And there might be something here and there. There's sort of, okay, that's interesting, sort of, but the bigger picture of things here, no, I don't buy it, right? And were your qualia changing or not? What is a change? Is it blue and then light blue, or, you know, a slightly more sour taste of the tomato? Is that a change, or is just that your normal fluctuation of the quality of that particular qualia, right? It changes sort of, maybe it's sort of how hard do you press that tomato to your throat, or do you just lick it with the tip of your tongue, or, you know, these kinds of, it's like, oh man, come on, man, right? You can't do this, right? And yes, the qualia is not important for when you have identified it's an elephant. It's no longer interesting whether or not it's grayish, brownish gray or bluish gray, that elephant, right? What is interesting, what the hell do I do now when I know that it's an elephant, right? Or my mind is experiencing elephant, right? There's a certain set of, you know, reactions that you might take. You're not going to sit there and say, well, did that color change or not? Do I trust these? No, that's not how it works. The qualia comes before the objectification of the elephant, or the tiger for that matter, to take something more dangerous possibly, right? And if you experience tiger, your whole apparatus starts to function in a certain way because of that concept, right? That's what's important. Not whether or not it's slightly this or that color, right? And it changed within the fraction of a second or something. If it stays the tiger, it's a fucking tiger. But if there weren't any qualia at all, right, you wouldn't have the concept. So yes, you can say that when you have the concept, the qualia is of secondary or tertiary importance. but they needed to be there in order for you to objectify it. So they are important in that sense. But after the step are taken towards a objectification of among your qualia, then the qualia loses its importance at that point. But that doesn't mean that they're completely irrelevant, right? And also, there might be some quality, like if a banana is greenly yellow, red, it might not be the best time to eat it. And if it's very dark brown yellow, it's possibly a stinker, right? So it's like there's also quality of qualia that points you in a certain direction of actions, right? Based on, experiences, right? Last time I ate that very green banana, it was almost unpeelable and tasted like, the mouth was something like that, right? So next time say, okay, green banana equals this kind of quality. I'm not interested, so I'm finding that particular shiny yellow one, right? So, but it's still the banana that is the core knowledge of it, the core interest, right? You're interested whether or not it's a banana. You're not interested in the color as such. It's not the qualia of the color. It's how it relates to your prior experiences and what you determine to do about it, right? That's why we need to go there. That's why we have those senses in order to create this story about what's going on that fits or don't fit with our prior experiences or our ideas of what to do, right? And if we didn't have the qualia, we'd have all the other things that follow from the qualia. But as I said before, as it has been objectified or whatever we want to call it, then the qualia starts to be put in a sort of a secondary or tertiary place, right?
This would be causing some differences in the processing there before you noticed. But were your qualia changing back and forth with the color changes on the screen? Now then, it puts the question to you. One of the defining qualities of qualia is their subjectivity. Qualia are what it's like for you. So you should know whether they were changing or not. As then it says, nobody knows or could know.
Maybe I should add, I'm not particularly fond of that. What is it like? I mean, there's not a qualia out there that it is like for me and like for you. No, the qualia is in your mind. If you have qualia, whatever, in your mind, there's nothing that says that anybody else has qualia. Or if they have qualia, it might not be like your qualia of the same type of, whatever source of that potential source of that qualia. You are in your own qualia and that's all you have, right? People reporting about, objects that you see to have qualia, like that banana, and they say yellow and, qualia. Yeah. That's what you could possibly agree on, but that doesn't mean that you have access to that and can say, therefore you have qualia. Again, the Cartesian demon, right? It's a reminder that there's a limit to what you can get to. You can't reason your way to this. You can't reason your way to say, therefore you must have qualia. You can do it and you can decide to act accordingly, but that doesn't mean that you actually experience that and can say, because I experienced this, you're experiencing that, right? So that there's a hard line between what you can know and what you can reason your way to, right?
The answer to this question better than you. So, what is your answer? Before you notice the color change, were your qualia changing or not? Well, you might like to think about that for a moment, and then we'll look at the different options. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so let's look at the options. The first one is to say, yes, your qualia were changing before you noticed the color change. So your qualia were changing, but you didn't notice that they were changing. That's a rather strange thing to say. It means that you're not authoritative about your own qualia, but your qualia are supposed to be what it's like for you, so you don't know what it's like for you. That seems an odd thing to say. I mean, if you allow the possibility that your qualia can change without your knowing it, then how do you know your qualia aren't changing all the time? Maybe they continually flip around like this. How do you know? we seem to have detached
Now,
the notion.
how do you know? I'm not. I'm thinking he's, extending this way beyond what he has already presented allows him to, right? And also, whenever it's just a simple thing, right? You can't use the term know or knowing or knowledge when you're doing metaphysics, because your metaphysics has to be settled before you can talk about doing epistemology to get to knowledge, right? So how do you know? Yeah, it's a figure of speech. But this term know or knowledge and knowing is fucking central to, a core concept, very important concept in, idea, term in philosophy, right? So don't screw around with the term know, right? Maybe your qualia change all the time without you knowing it. Maybe, right? Maybe I'm living inside a teapot, who knows? Maybe this, maybe that. What if? And if you say yes, you have to admit that you are not authoritative about your qualia. What? What? Authoritative? Right? I mean, my mind is apparently put together in that particular way that it's put together. I am not being an authority on my qualia, right? If I experience X, if I have blue, red, taste, sound, whatever, and then elephant and objectified elephant and door and, iPhone, whatever, in my vicinity, there are no elephants, mind you. But you have to trust me, I guess. It's like, you little people, you say, yes, you are not in authority. Let me tell you about how it's good philosophy, right? Oh.
If you take this option, then you're detaching the notion of qualia from the way that it was introduced as a name for what it's like to be you, subjectively. What it's like to be you subjectively ceases to be something that you know. You don't know what it's like to be you is like. So that doesn't look a very attractive option. Okay, so let's try the next option. No, you see, no, my qualia didn't change until I noticed the change. But then it looks like it's your judgments, your noticings, your reactions that are the really important events here. We say that your qualia have changed just when you've noticed a change in the image. But then it's really, the qualia aren't playing any role here in determining what it's like for you. It's your judgments that are determining what it's like for you. And we describe your experience as
So apparently, just to make sure I understand this, right, or this is how my understanding, there's a difference between qualia and what it's like. So what it's like is your something on about those qualia. I think this smells of bad metaphysics, right? This materialist, that the qualia are somehow out there, and you have what is likeness about those qualia. No, those qualia, everything you can refer to is going on in your mind. Where else would it be? If it was outside your mind, you wouldn't have any idea of it, right? So if I'm experiencing blue, that is particular to me. I'm not saying somebody else can't experience blue, but I can get to what the hell they're experiencing. If this computer, Keith Frankish, the people walking around out there, they're also an experience. Otherwise, how would I know about it if they weren't an experience? If I also have this inside-outside dichotomy, right? The foundations of this is screwed, right? Because he doesn't understand that the materialist metaphysics is self-contradictory or self-review. What's it called? It's paradoxical, right? You are, as Bernardo Kastrup says, you are the territory is pulled out of the map and reversed and something like that, right? It's this rookie mistake, right? That you think that what you experience is the actual outside, and you're just having some weird reflection inside that brain of yours, right? No, all of what you are experiencing everything is it inside your mind. And if there's an outside, well, what you have inside is merely a reflection of that, right?
Having certain qualia just because you've made the judgment that they do. Really talk about qualia as just a sort of logical construction out of the judgments that you've made. So to say that your experience has a qualia of yellow is just to say that you judge it to have one. Again, this seems to detach the notion of qualia from the way that it was originally introduced. The idea was that qualia are intrinsic, non-functional properties. They're not a matter of making certain judgments or having certain reactions. They're just a matter of the way the experience feels in itself. And after all, zombies, who are supposed to be functional duplicates of us without qualia, they would make all the same judgments and have all...
I'm having a hard time getting very deep into this because I understand that this is screwed from the ground, as I expressed before, right? But to elaborate on this kind of, do you experience the qualia as they are, or are you sort of putting it on the canvas yourself, or something like that, right? We can't tell. I would say, because I can't. If there's some blue folders over there on my shelf, right? When I look at them, I can't decide them to be red, right? They stay blue, and whenever I get past them, they are blue in this normal daylight and so on, right? If I had a red light, okay, they might change, but then it would be that same within that lighting experience. They would have that particular color every time, right? So I can't decide if they're blue or not. They're blue, and that's how they might change to green in the next second. I can't tell you because that's in the future. But, they're blue, and still blue, and still blue, right? I'm not deciding them to be blue. But that doesn't mean that blueness is outside my mind, right? So it points in the direction, it indicates that your senses keep supplying you some kind of, stream of something that your mind keeps presenting as blue, right? You can't get to what that stream of whatever it is other than saying, I have my mind's version of it when my mind has created, based on that stream, created that experience. And when I look back on it, so to say, from my mind's eye, so to say, I see my eyes and, whatever, there's electricity, potentially, whatever, right? But that's not what is really going on, because I can't get to that because I needed to have that experience of it before I could point my gaze towards it, right?
All the same reactions that you do. So in this sense, they would have qualia. If qualia are just logical constructions out of our judgments. So this doesn't look too attractive either. It seems to change the meaning of qualia. So, of the term qualia. So zombies would have qualia in that sense, yes. So maybe the right thing to say here is that you don't know whether your qualia were changing. Okay, well, you can say that, but then what could settle the matter? If you don't know, who might? Well, we might ask scientists to investigate the matter, and they certainly might be. They certainly could tell you which events, what changes were happening in your visual cortex. And they could say, well, these states here, they definitely were changing, and those states definitely weren't. And maybe we could call some of these states qualia and settle the matter that way. But then we're just putting the label qualia on certain neural states, certain states of your brain. And again, we seem to have detached the notion of qualia from the way it was introduced as a name for how things are for you subjectively. These are just
Okay, so now he's shitting his own bed, right? He's talking about how they are to you subjectively. Okay, but who's going to be that object telling you this is subjective, right? This subjective-objective dichotomy now, right? So you have a subjective experience of something that is accessible objectively by you. It's just these stupid people who are focused on these qualia, who shouldn't be, but they shouldn't be. They should be focused on this objective whatever, right? No, nobody has that access. They all have a subjective access based purely on those fucking qualia, right? You can't get behind the screen and say, okay, this is what is out there, and you have to adjust your qualia, whatever, something like that, right? No, it's the qualia, and then your objectifications of your qualia and your decisions further back here in your mind, so to say, with decisions of what to do about it, right? But because you have these abstractions or objectifications of your qualia from your qualia, doesn't mean that those objects are out there. They're still on your side of the screen, right? So, yeah.
Objectively describable brain states that the scientists are talking about.
Scientists are not going to tell us about metaphysics, right? That is this scientism bullshit, right? That, and mind you, I am educated in science and worked in that area for many years in the free market, right? Not as an academic. So this scientism is sort of taking control of every kind of thinking. That's stupid, because science is subordinate to philosophy and should be and must be, right? You can't create an idea of how to do science and then science is going to tell you how to get to those ideas, right? The thinking comes before science.
So maybe then we should just accept that qualia can't be known at all.
No, just accept is not a good argument, right? Just accept it. Just do as you're told by your masters, right?
Or either from the first person perspective or the third person perspective. But then, of course, that immediately raises the question of why we should think that qualia exist at all, if there are no.
So if they can't be known, he is screwing around with the term "know," right? But in this sense, you can't know about your qualia because they change, so you can't be certain, something like that, right? So we have to reject qualia. Is this sort of a screw around with, okay, just because I don't know if the bus is arriving at 12:05 or 12:06, I have to reject buses, right? Buses don't exist or don't matter because you can never know if they're exactly there at 12:05, right? This is a kind of argument, right? Is sophistry sort of just because he's lacking basic ways of arguing rigidly within philosophy or philosophically, right? He's just sort of I guess I cherry-picked some examples that point in direction we have to reject. We just have to accept that we cannot know anything about the qualia. Well, you have to have qualia in order to have anything to go with. So I'm not fucking, sidetracking my qualia. Quite on the contrary, to be quite frank, right? Quite Frankish.
In that way, what reason have we to think that they exist at all?
Okay, so again, existence, what is that? You haven't defined what it means to exist. Qualia, do they exist? Well, what about elephant? That's not a qualia, is it? You haven't settled these things, man, right? You're basically just farting left and right as you see fit and think, oh my God, we have to, dump these qualia and now I can control the narrative. I fucking don't buy this, right? This is, and this, what is it? Moscow Center for Consciousness Studies? You're having this garbage on your channel, man. Oh my God.
That is the challenge posed by change blindness, and you might like to look at some more examples of change blindness and think about that question, about that challenge yourself. Let's move on now to another example from Sweet Dreams. This is Mr. Clapgra's strange condition.
Don't
Now this
you-
begins with
Don't
again.
you just love these as if, oh, I never heard of Mr. Clapgrass. Oh, it's so possibly very important, right? Strap yourself in for some kind of sophistry. I'm going out on a limb here. It's sort of either some kind of cherry-picked psychology, test where things are blinking on very strange colors or whatever, something. And they say, aha, you can trust your senses, right?
with a real psychological condition, Capgras delusion. This is a delusion where the patient thinks that a close relative or a friend has been replaced with an imposter. They might say, my husband has been replaced by a clone, an imposter, a duplicate. It's not really him. And sometimes people with this delusion can...
Is that the zombie body snatcher? This old movie, there's an very old movie from way, way back, Body Snatcher. I don't know.
Can become, they're certainly very distressed, and they can sometimes become quite antagonistic towards their relative. Now, what seems to be happening in this delusion is something like this. The person has a normal vision, and they can recognize faces perfectly normally. So
Oh, man! Get to the fucking point, you annoying... Oh, man! Oh, oh man! Oh, man! Think of yourself being either married to this dude or having to have a lecture with him. Oh, man. Oh, man. The state of academia, man. It's like...
they recognize the face of this person as the face of their relative. But there's something that's gone wrong with the systems that generate the normal emotional responses to faces. So when they recognize this face, it doesn't any longer trigger the subtle, complex emotional responses that the face normally triggers, the feelings of familiarity, of love, and so on.
So you just get to claim that? And I've never experienced, whenever I see a person I know very well, I never experienced, oh, who the fuck is that? Or something like that, right? I might be in a situation where I see a face and I sort of, that really looks like that other person, right? And then I look, no, that kind, the voice is different, whatever, right? But I've never sort of, unless, I know my grandparent, one of actually, a couple of my, particularly one grandparent, my grandfather, went, what's it called when you get old and forgetful? You sort of your mind start to diminish, right? And he couldn't recognize certain. And actually, my grandmother on the other side also had suffered from that, right, at the ripe old age of 85 or something like that. Then yes, but that's your mind starting to destroy itself, self-implode or something like that, right? We are talking about well-functioning people, so I can't imagine how what is this kind of theoretical scenario that I basically have never in my 56 years experienced, right? You can't just create these trolley problem-like scenarios. Oh, this is the case, and that is the case, and this is the case, and without saying you have to be able to experience this or have an everyday experience of it, right? That's something that can happen once in a blue moon. That's not good philosophy to base anything on or any kind of judgment of how things works on the everyday level, right?
So the people with this condition recognize friends and relatives, but just don't get that feeling of familiarity that they used to get. So they conclude that the person must be an imposter. They look exactly the same, but they don't feel the same. And this is very real and troubling to the people involved. We can see this condition, then it points out that this condition is, in a way, the opposite of another condition, prosopagnosia, where people can't any longer recognize familiar faces. Their vision is fine, and they can see the faces okay, and they can describe them, but they don't recognize them. They can't put an identity to the face. However, they do still have many of the normal emotional, physiological reactions to them. They do show signs of an emotion.
I just might add, being boring is not a good argument. It doesn't invalidate. That in itself doesn't validate what he's trying to argue, right? In itself. You have to look at the argument. I just want to, get that straight, right? But it doesn't help me get involved in this extremely long-winded, boring, sort of monotone, droning kind of. Get to the point, man, right? And then, maybe put in a link and say, go to this article and get deeper into this. But get to the fucking point a bit quicker than this, right? I've made a sort of complete overview of my metaphysics and what that might entail into, epistemology, objectivity, and ethics, right? Within sort of 45 minutes or something like that, right? You can find on my channel that it's called Idealism, Metaphysics Without Woo-Woo, right? It's sort of I think about a year old or something like that, right? So you can go back in my feed. And I try to get, because it's more important for me that you get the big picture rather than have a series of infinite numbers of small pictures, then you afterwards have to piece together into this big picture. That seems very fluffy, right? So get the big picture, and then people can sort of think for themselves and add little pieces that they need here and there, or you can discuss it later, and then, maybe take a slice of it and then go deeper into that. But create this big picture within half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. That sort of settles it, right? This is where I am in my big picture. This sort of, the cherry picking here, cherry picking there, and then there's no qualia, right? Or the qualia doesn't matter, right? We can't trust it. Oh, man. And qualia in itself is such, to me at least, such a sort of very important, but it's a subset of, maybe 20 different aspects, 10, 20 different aspects of metaphysics, right? And he can spend like 6 hours on that alone in order to convince you that they're not important. So it's like, is that the purpose in sort of, okay, these qualia, you can't trust them, right? So we can get around the hard problem of consciousness, right? No. It's never going to work this, right?
Emotional response to the person.
And as I said before, this shows you the state of academia. This is what you get for your money, right? These people should be fucking defunded immediately, right? They're parasites who can't even make a coherent presentation or anything that a normally functioning person of a sufficiently high intelligence, let's say, put it that way, can actually follow and get something from that works in their everyday. So, okay, I see if we point this way, that way. It's just all over the place, right? And it's not even very well put together, right? It's sort of, he's doing this little, orange headings and then a list of text and a picture from Pixabay or something like that, right? This is what you get for presentation, right?
And whereas in Capgras delusion, it's the other way around. They can recognize the faces, but don't have the emotional reaction. Now, so those are real conditions. Now, then it uses those as the basis to devise a new intuition pump. And this is Mr. Capgras. Now, which is the name is a variation on Capgras, of course. So here's the story. Mr. Capgras wakes up one morning and he finds that the colours of things just don't seem right anymore. He can't explain exactly what it is, but everything just seems visually wrong. Now he goes to see his doctor.
Have you, Mr. Frankish, ever woken up one morning and colors are all wrong? And by the way, qualia is not only colors, right? There are tastes, there are sounds and smells and feels, right? Tactile, whatever it is. Why are you not talking about those? It's like if you... I would say that colors are the most important qualia. For various reasons we could go into another time, right? But what about the other things? Why is it so hung up on colors, right? And have you ever experienced that waking up one morning and colors all wrong according to... And how do you know what it means to be wrong? You could say they're not like they used to be. But is that wrong? Is that just because it's different doesn't mean that it's not right anymore. Maybe they're supposed to look like that now. How the hell do you know, right? You don't know what the future should be like, right? But have anybody, please somebody, tell me, have you woken up in your lifetime and suddenly, unless you have been drinking all night and smoked what you shouldn't smoke or something like that, or were hit on the head by, a stupid idiot, right? Have you ever woken up and experiencing this, right? You can't base your philosophy on freaky thoughts, claims like this, right? I'm fucking not buying it, and I am urging you to be careful with this guy, right? Because he just, basically conjures up what he basically needs in order to convince you that he needs to say, look at these weird colors, right? That's weird, and that's why you shouldn't trust them.
He has a bunch of tests, and the doctor tests his colour vision, and it turns out that his colour vision is fine. He can identify colours with complete accuracy. Gets them exactly right, just as he always used to. So he has normal vision. His vision
You don't know that
he can recognise.
You don't know that he has a habitual thinking. Just like my binders over there, they're blue. How do I know they should be blue? How the hell would I know that? Right? I can't look up on my, control mechanism that says, yes, these maps, binders should be blue. It says here in the manual. There is no manual, right? Oh my God, he's stupid, man. Oh, it triggers me that stupid people like this get airtime, right?
Colours perfectly. The trouble is he doesn't seem to be having the normal emotional reactions to colours. Colours don't seem to be affecting him in the way that they were.
Oh my God. Get to the fucking point, man.
The flavouring has gone all askew in him. All the personal dispositions that make paintings worth looking at, rooms worth painting, colour combinations worth choosing. The subjective effects of colour that contribute to making life.
Well, it's a good thing that you don't have to live from this, right? You get your money anyway, right? You get your payment anyway, because all your customers, they've gone now because it's so fucking boring, right? It's only, crazy philosophers like me who keep going, man, right? Holy shit, this is so boring, man. Oh, man. Okay, the subtle, ineffable flavoring that has gone all askew in him, all the personal disposition that make paintings worth looking at, rooms worth painting, color combination worth choosing, the subjective efforts of colors that contribute to making life worth living have changed. So now you're also combining worth living colors. Oh my God. Well, so when Picasso made, the famous 1905 painting from the brothel or whatever it's called, right? With these women looking like cupists, whatever, right? Then life was not worth living anymore. It's something similar to that, at least, right? Or when there's a scene in that how to wash your elephant. The Birdie Nam Nam Peter Sellers movie, right? The Party, it's called, right? Where they have this elephant in freaky psychedelic colors. Those were the times back then, right? In mid-60s. And then, so now the elephant is red and green and orange. So my life is no longer worth living. I mean, is this because it doesn't matter whether if your mind has been screwed with, right? You have psychedelics or anything like that, or somebody else changed the colors. That shouldn't be a difference because it's the same qualia, right? So I don't get this. I mean, it's ridiculous, right?
Life worth living has changed. So he still recognizes colors. He recognizes all the different subtle hues of the countryside, say, but they don't create the same emotional reaction in him. In fact, think colors that he used to enjoy now repulse him. Foodstuffs that he used to enjoy eating, he now finds look.
My answer would be, well, let me get back to you when I experience this. I'll give you a report, man, right? And I mean, and if you want a report, but I could be lying, right? How would you know? If somebody rang you down, hey, all my colors are weird. I'm losing my lifeblood, my life will to live, right? But what would you say, Keith, right? What would you say? Would you say, oh my God, I'm right. My philosophy is right. Or would you say, hey, who are you? What? Why you? What did you do? Are you sitting in a weird room, or are you eating some mushrooms, or what the hell are you doing, right? How would you know? And even if you had that experience yourself, what would you do with it? Would you just sit there and say, well, I guess I lost the will to live? Maybe that would be, then we will have one less illusionist, right? But it's like, you haven't followed the trail of your argument to anything other than, okay, I have to create the scenario, right? This is all mental, conceptual mindfuck. You are so tying yourself into this weird knot, then you then can't get out of and say, okay, I guess I can't trust the qualia, right?
Revolting. Colors that used to calm him now make him agitated, and vice versa, and so on. This image here is meant to give a sort of suggestion of how the world might seem to him. How it seems to him is really the question. So again, Dennett has a question here. Have Mr. Klapgar's qualia changed? Can he tell himself? Suppose we ask him. He might say, well, I don't really know. It's not that things seem to have changed their color. I can still...
All this elaborate mindfuck just to try to say that you don't need to deal with the hard problem of consciousness, right? This is what has been going on for a couple of hours, at least now, maybe 2 hours, maybe more. I don't remember how long the lecture one was, but it was also around, wasn't it around an hour? So 2.5, 3 hours in, and he's trying to create some weird story about if this happened and if that was the case, and you would do this, right, and therefore, right. This is the level of rigid, quote, philosophical argumentation this professor of whatever, right, tries to force feed you or tries to lure you into eating, right? It's so garbage. I mean, it's like, I can't believe how bad this is, right? It's sort of an appeal. It's sort of hoping that people are so stupid that they're not going to catch him in this manipulation he's basically doing, right? Maybe he thinks that he's doing something great, but I can tell you, from the best of my understanding, what he's trying to say, it's bullshit, right? It's bullshit. wrapped in nice paper, right?
Recognize the colors of everything. That still seems to be yellow, and that seems to be blue, and so on. I don't. It's not as if colors have inverted, but they just don't feel the same. They don't feel right. It's almost like they're imposter colors, you might say, just as the person with Capgras delusion says that people look like imposters. But when we press him, we say, yes, but it intrinsically, what's the intrinsic feel of the experience, separate from your reactions to it, separate from the way that it makes you feel? How is the
Whatever you feel from your qualia has nothing to say about the qualia. Yes, you could say that the response of a certain qualia is somehow, it's causally maybe correlated with the qualia, right? But that you have a feeling about X says nothing about X, right? That I love to look at my car is not a part of the car, right? That I have a certain emotional reaction to a certain color or something like that, or shape, says nothing about the shape or the color or the taste or whatever it is, right? You're reversing the flow of things in this metaphysics, right? It's like you say, so now my reactions to it can validate or invalidate or something like that what you are having of certain kinds of qualia. And also this kind of, what is it like to have this qualia, right? So he's inventing some levels that I don't see this necessary in order to, remove himself from the qualia so he can stay away from it and say, yeah, I have everything covered, I don't need the qualia. I guess it's something along what a guy like Stefan Molyneux is doing, right? He is afraid that he might become crazy if his materialist approach to seeing the world, let's say, might be refuted, right? So this guy is very adamant about making sure that he can stay with the materialist understanding. Maybe he doesn't even know there's an alternative that is far superior to that, right? But in order to stay there, he needs to circumvent or get around the hard problem of consciousness somehow. And this is how he's going to say that the hard problem says, just because you experience, you can describe your experience using science and so on, and have objectification elephants, that doesn't entail that you need to have a particular qualia, right? Why does elephant necessarily mean gray, for instance, right? Or why does banana mean yellow? Why would it be something else? You can't get to a causality, you can't even get to a correlation, right? There's no way, there's no reason why it should be that particular thing, right? Or at least you can argue from that materialist point of view why it should end up being yellow, right? But the point is, the whole picture of materialism is incorrect. You're thinking, you're seeing things from the outside and moving into your brain or into your mind, but everything is going on from the inside and looking out, so to say. And there's a border between your experience, and that which you claim that experience is a reflection of. And that is the realm, so to say, you can't get to, as Immanuel Kant would say, right? So it's sort of this Copernican, he's still living in the Earth-centric solar system, right? Where the idealist and say, no, the sun has to be in the center, right?
What are the colours like in themselves, apart from your reactions? And he might quite legitimately say that he can't really do that. He can't distinguish the intrinsic component of the experience from the reactions that it's creating in him. The reactions have changed, and that's changed the character of the experience completely. Now, if Mr. Capgras can't do this, can't answer this question about his qualia, then, then it concludes, perhaps these intrinsic properties are an artifact of an obsolete theoretical vision, the Cartesian theatre. and rather than anything that we should continue to seek in our scientific explorations of consciousness. They're just a feature of a model of a bad model of consciousness, and the moral is we should drop that model. Okay, now let's move on to
our scientific explorations of consciousness. Okay, so this is scientism, right? It's trying to move philosophy out of the way and say you have to measure stuff in order to know stuff, right? So, this is where it's trying to go.
Dennett's latest book.
Okay, I'm sorry, we are not going to end part 2 of his lecture this time either. So maybe this is a good point to stop here, and I am at the 55-minute mark now, and just say, share, like, and subscribe. Write a comment, or if you want, join the Discord link below, and otherwise, have a very nice day. See you later.